There are dozens of fandoms that I've been a part of for years, specifically because of the books that I would read when I was a younger teen or even before that. There's, of course, Percy Jackson, which you can see over here. There's Ranger's Apprentice, which is over here. There's Fablehaven, which is over here with all of the sequels. There's Septimus Heap, which is like behind Ranger's Apprentice, so on and so forth. Like I've been around the block. I've read a lot of books, but for some reason there has always been one that just fully escaped me. I was obviously aware of its existence, but for some reason I just never bothered to like read it. Well, until now. But what's changed, you might ask? The feeling I hate probably the most is FOMO. I hate missing out on stuff. I love taking part in like online events or like fandom events, whatnot. And one thing that really piqued my interest was the upcoming film for Sunrise on the Reaping. There were all these cool casting announcement videos, the trailer, people just in general losing their mind. And the film goes out this year. So I decided to make it my mission this year to read all the books and watch all the films from the Hunger Games franchise so that I can fully immerse myself in the experience of the new film coming out and just like live in it with the fandom. So yeah, I read all the Hunger Games books and watched all the Hunger Games films, and I have a lot of thoughts. So I did the only logical YouTuber thing to do, and I decided to make a video about it. Hello, my name is Freyr, I'm your favorite local forest gremlin and a Polish sociology student. And I want to welcome you to my little corner of the internet where I discuss all forms of popular media that interest me, whether that's books, TV shows, films, music, whatnot. We do it all here. This video was honestly not very easy to like write because I was reading these books for the past like 3 weeks, I would say. And it was an exhausting experience. But you know, if you do end up enjoying the video, you can always subscribe to the channel, you can like the video, you can leave a comment, you can hype the video, you can share it around with your friends, and you can also follow me on all my other socials, which include Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, also Letterboxd and Goodreads. Those are going to be mentioned a lot in this video, so like leave a follow there as well. I really hope that you guys end up enjoying this video because I went through it writing it. It was just like, my God. And even though I do think that it was like an exhausting experience, it was also very much worth it. And I think these are books that everybody kind of should, at some point in their life, read. I have a lot of thoughts about the plots, the characters, how some of them are executed, but I also took a lot from these books, and I want to talk about the lessons that I personally learned from reading The Hunger Games. And I also want to briefly talk about how the general public consumes the series, because I think there are a few things to be said there as well. And also, just in general, I do think that books like these are important, especially in the year of 2026. Like, I was unable to read these books and not think about different situations happening around the world. Unfortunately, at times, these books hit a little too close to home. So yeah, how this video is gonna work is there are gonna be sections for each of the books. First, we're gonna go to The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay, and of course, later Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. In each section, I'm gonna talk about both the book and the film, or the films in case of Mockingjay, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts about all of that. Also, this video is going to include spoilers, so just watch out for that. I will try not to like spoil everything, but some important plot points and character deaths are going to be mentioned, so just beware. You have been warned. And also, if you haven't read a specific book in the series and you want to avoid that section, I will leave chapters in the timeline so you can jump around freely however you want. And with that, I think it's time to start talking about the books and the films, starting with the very first, The Hunger Games. I think this book is a classic and it was very good. And also, I would say it's a comparatively easy read to some of the later installments in the series. I mean, of course, it was devastating in places, but still, definitely the easiest book to read out of all of them. This book tells the story of Katniss Everdeen, who ends up competing in the Hunger Games after her sister Prim gets reaped for the games. Katniss volunteers, of course, and goes on to fight in the games alongside Peeta Mellark. She hides, makes alliances with people like Rue, and then ends up winning alongside Peeta, making it the first time that two people won an edition of the Hunger Games. And important to mention here, they only win because they threaten to kill themselves, because the capital needs a winner, they need a victor. I think this book introduces the world of Panem very well. We learn about specifically District 12 and the capital through the eyes of Katniss as she travels to the capital to compete in the games. I would say though, the way we get introduced to the world is a little wonky. Like the first 50 pages, I want to say, contain just like a lot of big lore dumps about the war, the rebellion, the district, Katniss's family, the capital, the games, just like everything. I think it could have been better to just like follow Katniss as she lives her life in District 12, and then along the way we walk past, I don't know, a statue that reminds her of the things she learned in school about like the rebellion or the war or something, you know, that type of stuff. I don't really like lore dumps that much. I like to see the world and understand it without the book like overly explaining it to me. I guess that's one of the like only negatives I would have to say about this book. We immediately jump into the stuff around the games, but I like to live in the world a little bit more. I like to see the life of Katniss, learn more about her, and have the games be something scary that's like on the horizon and like rapidly approaching, and then it, of course, you know, takes its victims. I think it'd be interesting to just like watch the life of Katniss before the games, or just like a couple days before, to just kind of like establish certain traits, certain character traits, and like certain relationships, and not just like immediately throw her into the games, because that's kind of how the book starts. But aside from that, I really enjoyed this book. Seeing every part of the process of the games was really interesting, and I think the story was very good. I think it's very easy for me to understand why this book is so iconic. We see the thought process of Katniss, we see her stress, how overwhelmed she is, her motives, we see all of that, and I really enjoyed that. I think she has a very complete psychological portrait for a character, which I definitely appreciate. I like complete psychological portraits in characters. And also Peeta. Peeta is the GOAT. I love Peeta so much. Peeta, and before the questions even appear, yes, Peeta is the one I wanted for Katniss to end up with. I'm a penis shipper for life. The fact that that's their ship name. I love that the entire fandom just collectively came together and agreed that that is their ship name. I will not be giving my opinion on Gale now. I'm gonna do that when we get to the Mockingjay book, because I feel like we need the context of the entire trilogy to really judge him. But one thing I will say for now is that I hate the love triangle of these books. There are only like a few love triangles I've ever accepted in any media I consumed, just in general, not even books, shows, films, anything. I don't like that trope. I really don't. I hate it practically every time, and this is an example of that. I didn't live for it. And I also think that that entire subplot, that entire relationship thing, waters down the actual message of the books and the films, because ultimately that's what most people are gonna be focusing on, whether you're Team Peeta or Team Gale. I do have my answer to that question, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. Like, I just don't care. That's not why I was reading The Hunger Games. I think with practically each of the books, there was one thing specifically that really stood out to me and that really made me think. When it came to, you know, their message, there was one thing that my brain specifically decided to just like laser focus on. And with this one, I would say it was the PR relationship and a caricature of a reality show in the form of The Hunger Games. People need a story in order to care about Katniss and Peeta, and they're only going to root for them if that story is successful. And that means they have to kiss, they have to proclaim their love for each other in order to receive gifts and survive. In Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we see more of how the audience interest in the Hunger Games was developed, but here we see it at its peak, and it's this parasocial relationship that the capital citizens develop with Katniss and partially also with Peeta. They of course root for them, but they also don't care about the fact that they are in a game that forces them to kill other people. And when these people do, in fact, die, for the most part, it's just shrugged off. It's, well, sad, moving on. We have our star-crossed lovers in this like tragic situation, and that's so sad, so beautiful. And that's kind of where it ends. And Katniss and Peeta have to play along with it, whether they want to or not, because otherwise they just die. And also because practically no one who has an impact on the games sees them as people. They're only entertainment. And also the public of the capital is so desensitized. Am I saying that word correctly? I don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm saying, right? They watch each year as 24 kids kill each other and are like, yay, more. There's no regard for human life that comes from outside of the capital. That's cruel on so many levels, but I also think it's something that we can compare to real life, unfortunately. In order to care about people losing their lives and suffering, most of the folks who make up the general public need a story. That was something I was thinking about a lot whilst reading this book. Obviously, it's not to this extent in our world, but it's definitely something I'm noticing a lot. Overall, I did really like this book. I thought that the action was good. I think it was very well paced, well written. I really did enjoy the experience of reading it. I think it was a great start to the story, and I also love the way that it ends with Katniss realizing that winning the Hunger Games doesn't mean that they actually end. It's going to haunt her for the rest of her life, and every day will be like she's still a tribute, fighting for her life, especially now since the President Snow hates her. One thing I will say about the Hunger Games, especially the 3 main books, actually, no, all of them. Susan Collins knows how to write. I really, really enjoy her writing. However, her endings of these books sometimes leave stuff to be desired. This isn't the worst example of that. But I kind of wish that the scene with Haymitch was developed more. These final lore dumps in this book and also in Catching Fire specifically, they are just a bit underwhelming. Like, I don't enjoy that, but more on that book later because we still have the film to talk about. Before I even start talking about it, can I just say it's a funny coincidence that I'm recording this video now, that it's the week of the 14th anniversary of this film coming out. I did not realize that when I was writing this video and was preparing for it. I was like, I just want to do this video now for no particular reason. I'm just reading the books now because I have time to do it, and I'm just gonna make this video. And then I look on Twitter like a couple days ago and I'm like, wait, this is also the week of the anniversary of the first film coming out. Maybe that's the sign from the universe, you know, I don't know. Maybe that means that the video is gonna end up looking serviceable. I think that this film is low-key one of the best book adaptations I've ever seen. It's a practical like one-to-one with the book, but it still finds a way to make it interesting. It has peak casting, amazing cinematography, great writing, and I would say it's a very good depiction of the book. I really did enjoy Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss. I think she did a very, very good job, but I'm gonna say the best casting decision in this film, in my opinion, is Josh Hutcherson as Peeta. Like, he is so Peeta. He is the best Peeta to ever Peeta. Like, that's the Peeta. He is perfect, actually. And also, I did really enjoy Woody Harrelson as Haymitch. That was so good. I was so gagged to see him because I was like literally just before I was watching the Hunger Games, I did a little marathon of some of the Now You See Me movies, and he's in them. He has actually a very prominent part in those films. And I was like, wait, I know this face from somewhere. And I Googled him. I was like, oh my God, that's the guy. And also, why did no one tell me Stanley Tucci was in this? Like, fuck you mean? That's literally, that's fodder, that's icon. I think this film brings the world of the Hunger Games to life perfectly. I think the technology looks so good. You have all the like extravagant fashion, the totally weird, almost alien-like behavior of the capital citizens. It's such a good visualization of it. It shows the contrast. It shows the extravagance, but also the contrast between the lives in the districts when compared to the capital so well. There were a lot of scenes I really, really loved in this film. The scene of Katniss's assessment was so cool with her, you know, shooting the arrow at the organizers. I loved that scene with Rue, which, I mean, of course, that was heartbreaking. That broke me even more than the books, to be honest. I thought that the interview with Peeta with Caesar Flickerman, played by Stanley Tucci, which is again crazy, that scene was so good. I also really liked the last fight scene with Kato. I also really love that we got to see some scenes here and there of Haymitch and him trying to get sponsors for Katniss, or him like noticing certain behaviors in the capital citizens. That one scene where a kid receives a toy sword specifically, that one stands out in my mind. Also, just, I mean, of course I have to shout out the fact that Taylor Swift is featured in the soundtrack for this film. Like, hello, there's my little poster that I got, postcard most so, which I got during the release party of A Showgirl in cinema. I've been a Swiftie for ages, and Safe and Sound and Eyes Open, I believe, are both on the soundtrack for this film, which, by the way, I also did talk about Safe and Sound very recently on the channel. I talked about the music video for it specifically. I ranked every Taylor Swift music video like 2 weeks ago, so go and watch that video if you haven't already, after this one, of course, but still, plugging that in. Personally, I thought that this film was kind of perfect. It was as close to perfection as you can get, which is something that cannot be said about some of the later installments, but more on that later. From The Hunger Games, we move on to Catching Fire. Everybody wants to lose. Yes. RuPaul's Drag Race All Winners. This was probably, I want to say, my favorite book out of all 5 of them. This book follows Katniss and Peeta as they live their lives in the victor's village after winning the games. Snow threatens Katniss and is also saying that she might be a reason for a possible uprising. Then Katniss and Peeta go on Victor's tourney around the districts, and they accidentally cause like violence and deaths and cause uprisings. They plan to get married in this like PR marriage kind of way, but Snow has other plans for them. The next edition of the Hunger Games is the 75th edition of the games, and it's called the Quarter Quell. Every 25 years, there is a special edition of the games. There was an edition when the district citizens had to vote for who would be the tributes, and then the next one was the Hunger Games, where the amount of tributes was doubled, and that's the one that Hamish Abernathy won. But this one was special because all the tributes would be reaped from the remaining victors. So Katniss and Peeta have to go into the games for a second year in a row, unaware of a conspiracy that is meant to get them out of there, alongside some other victors. I really enjoyed this book, specifically because in this book, I feel like our main characters of Katniss and Peeta gain consciousness. They gain awareness. What I mean by that is, in the first book, I felt like they kind of go through all the motions without much understanding of what's going on around them. They learn how to win over the public and how to garner support. But in this book, they actually realize more about the politics of Panem. They learn about the revolution, the uprising, how President Snow hates them. In this book, they just seemed so much more aware. You can see them putting the pieces together. And as a reader, I really, really enjoyed that. I think that was the thing I focused on the most in this book. It was the full political spectrum of Panem, and also the figure of President Snow as a dictator or an authoritarian leader. I will say he does definitely remind me of a few people who are unfortunately still alive today, but also the small acts of defiance done by the victors and how they very clearly affect not just the rebellion, but also the viewers of the Hunger Games was so interesting to watch, in my opinion. That entire scene with, that entire section of the talk show with Caesar Flickerman is just a one big fuck you to the Capitol. You have people outright questioning the logic of still running the games. You have Joanna being Joanna, which we love. You have Katniss's dress, Peeta announcing the pregnancy. Wait, because I kind of made it sound like he was the one. I kind of made it sound like he was the one who was pregnant. Peeta announcing Katniss's pregnancy, fake pregnancy, of course. I think there was something very inspirational, very uplifting in it, especially the scene when they all like hold their hands. The Capitol is gonna kill most of them, but they are not going to go down with their heads bowed. And I felt so moved by that moment. Part of why this book is so good, in my opinion, is because of the characters that it introduces. You have specifically from the side of the victors, I would say Finnick, Joanna, BT, Wyrus, and Max specifically. All of them I just adore. They are fully fleshed out with personalities, backstories, relationships. That's something that the first book kind of had, but not quite. Aside from Rue and maybe Fresh and Kato, we didn't really know much about all the other competitors. And here we have several that become very important characters, especially as they continue to work together with Katniss and Peeta. Finnick and Joanna specifically are my favorites. I love Finnick just being hot, like obviously, but his story and personality makes him one of my favorite characters in the entire series. And Joanna is just the Contrast Supreme. She's Miss Cunt, okay? She's so fierce, so cool, so badass. Like, how could you not stand Joanna? Here, I also want to shout out the fact that I really like how the Hunger Games are used so differently in each of the books. I feel like it could have been very easy for them to just like go, oh, this was successful the last time, let's repeat it the same way, just change some details for it to make sense with the story. And here the games do happen again. They are repeated, but it makes sense for our characters to go and compete in them. And then the theme of the arena of the Hunger Games kind of comes back also in Mockingjay, which I also thought was a really, really neat reference. The ending of this book, whilst it felt rushed, it was a gag. I did not know how this book ended, unlike the first one, so I was shocked. The first one, obviously, I kind of knew through like just the cultural osmosis. This book, I knew practically nothing about going into it, so I was so shocked by that ending. I was stunned. I was gagged. I mean, my Goodreads review says it all. I was shooketh. I think it was kind of a genius ending. I do, however, have to say that again, the final lore dump was very underwhelming. It's meant to explain to us what really went down in the arena and what the plan was, but it's just so poorly executed. Low-key, and hear me out on this because this might be a controversial take or something, but I would rather have the book end with the explosion of the force field and some mysterious hovercraft like hovering over Katniss. It would have so much more mystery as to like what happened. It would leave us on a much more like a much bigger cliffhanger, and I feel like we could start book 3 immediately from like explaining what really went down, and maybe there could be more time for the lore dump to not feel as rushed and just like squeezed in at the end. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. Overall, I really did enjoy this book. I like the change in awareness of the characters. I like the different dynamics, and I really enjoyed the plan of the games, how they looked like, the entire scheme behind it. That was just so interesting. This book was so good and probably the most enjoyable out of all of them, in my opinion. As for the film, this film was so peak. I'm sorry. The first one was great, obviously. It's a perfect adaptation. It's iconic, so on and so forth. But this breathes new life into a story that is already so good. It's actually perfect. The performances in this are stellar, like actually insane. Finnick is perfection. I think Sam Claflin really brought him to life. Also, yes, I was looking respectfully, of course. I saw a Letterboxd review for this film specifically that basically said something along the lines of, if that was me, I would intentionally get knocked out so that Finnick could give me a mouth-to-mouth. And unfortunately, I mean, I do kind of agree. Joanna. Oh my God, Joanna. Jenna Malone devoured this role. It was insane to watch. That scene with the interview was even more impactful to me in the books. Like, she just starts screaming at one point. I also loved the look of the arena and how they presented the tropics. I think the action scenes were so epic, and I would actually say that they were better than the first film. It looked beautiful, and it was also emotional as hell. Them finding out about the Quarter Quell, the cruelty of Fred, the sacrifice of Mags, like, man. Also that entire scene with Cinna, I was just like, what the fuck, actually? That was like, we actually just watched somebody get murdered, like beaten to death. I don't think I talked about Cinna in the section for the Hunger Games. I loved Cinna. I loved him in the books. I liked him in the films. I think in the books he was a little bit better, but still, he is an icon. He's a legend. The father, if you will. I'm waiting for his guest judging spot on RuPaul's Drag Race. I think that'd be appropriate. What specifically stood out to me about this film is the fact that we get to see scenes of President Snow making decisions and thinking about Katniss. We don't get to see that in the books because they focus on one perspective and they never switch it, which is of course Katniss, and in the prequels it's Coriolanus and Haymitch, but I appreciate that in this film. These scenes were actually so interesting to see, like the decision making behind all of it. This was my favorite of the films. I'm just gonna say that right now. It was my favorite of the films. I loved it. Loved it so much. From Catching Fire, we go to Mockingjay. This book I had mixed feelings about because it was very good in places, but I also did not like the ending of it. But more on that later. This cover, though, is probably my favorite. It's really pretty. I really like the blue. This book follows Katniss as she wakes up in District 13 and accepts her role as Mockingjay after making some demands to President Coin, who is the leader of District 14 and also of the rebellion. She is rattled by her experiences, her trauma, post-traumatic stress syndrome, her mental health is on a decline, and also the situation with Pida doesn't help. We see the growth of the rebellion and the new threats that appear from the side of the capital. It all culminates in an attack at the capital. This book was good in parts. I specifically really liked all of the like rebellion stuff. I don't know, it feels wrong to say, but like I like the underground rebellion vibe, aesthetic, theme. I don't know how to put it. Like maybe theme is the best word for it, but like I like rebellion stuff in books, in films, in shows, just in general. I really like that. And this one I would say is executed pretty perfectly. I loved seeing life in District 13 and how their hope grows and how they're still able to feel joy regardless of the outside circumstances, specifically in the cases of like the bombing of District 13 when they're like playing with the cat, or the wedding of Finnick and Annie. And in other situations, it gives you hope seeing them like do something successfully against the capital. But then this book also hits you with punches to the stomach. You have the bombing of the hospital. You have everything about Peeta, really. You have Snow knowing exactly how to break Katniss even further. You have, again, the bombing of District 13. Like, most of all, I think the biggest one, I would say, is Katniss and her mind. She is not well. This entire book, she is just falling apart, but forces herself to keep going because there's too much at stake. Reading this book, I was kind of just like wondering how she even survived. I feel like under this much stress, pressure, and after witnessing so many horrible things, my body would just give out. If I was in her position, I would just not wake up one day, I feel like. My body would just be like, okay, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. Bye. So I low-key admire the fact that she does survive it and lives, even though the trauma also lives on forever. On the other hand, though, the moment we get to the section with the attack on the Capitol, the entire book starts being very interesting. Choices were made, let's just say that. I think there were only few character deaths in this finale that actually made sense to me. And out of all the people who go with Katniss, somehow Gale survives. Okay, actually, maybe let's talk about him more because I previously said that I would talk about him when we would get to this book. I think it's time for the roast of Gale because, mama, I have feelings and I have thoughts about him. Gale is a little bitch and I hate him. He is the most annoying and also stupid on purpose character in this entire book series. I find it hard to describe even. Like, he has a bit of like pick-me energy. Like, he is desperately trying to be the main character of the story. Babe, you're not. Sit down. He has so many moments where his brain just stops working. He makes stupid choices and he does stupid shit that affects both him and the people he apparently loves. Yet Katniss always still sees him as someone special because she knew him for so long. And don't get me started on all the conversations in book 3 about who she loves more and their connections. Like, my friend, time and place. Y'all are in the bunker leading a rebellion or in the field during a mission, preparing for it. And you're talking about that, like, just shut up. And also, he doesn't even really bother to sympathize with Katniss. He doesn't understand her situation whatsoever. And he doesn't try to. He is so weirdly self-absorbent, more aggressive than her, but also he gets tunnel vision a lot. That moment in Catching Fire when he finds out about the uprising in one of the other districts, like, girl, what were you trying to achieve aside from getting your ass beaten? Like, what was the goal? He is unable to see the bigger picture, has no subtlety and no regard for the feelings of others. And not only that, he is a cold-hearted little bitch with little regard for the life of strangers. In this book, he deadass wants to just destroy the knot, regardless of who's in it, because they're all working for the capital. Like, yeah, so were you. All of the citizens of the districts did that, whether it was voluntarily or not. So, like, they're not that different to you, my friend. And he just wants to kill all of them. Like, if I was Katniss, I would just dump his ass right there and then. I would just be like, fuck you. Actually, I'm not talking to you anymore. Go opposite direction. I never want to see you, like, ever. Just go away. Leave me alone. And also, sorry, comparing him to Peeta, like, those are two completely different leagues of men. All my homies hate Gale. That's just the truth. But back to what I was previously talking about. I think that character deaths are suspicious. A lot of them are very, like, gory and just, like, horrible. I was disturbed by reading some of these descriptions, but at the same time, a lot of these deaths didn't really have much of a purpose, in my opinion. It felt like Miss Suzanne went into that final section of the book and thought to herself, okay, we gotta up the ante. This is the final battle. Everyone except the main character, Peeta and Gale, are going to die because it's so serious and so dangerous. And I just don't subscribe to that. There were two deaths that specifically really, really angered me. And here, I guess, spoiler alert, if you haven't read this book. First was Finn. He literally just got married and he was such a close friend of Katniss and he seemed like such an important character too. And then he just dies. I hated it. I liked Finnick a lot in the books. I liked him even more in the film. And I did not understand why he died. He doesn't even get to see his kid. I was so mad. And the other one that I was really upset about was Prim. I don't get why that death was necessary. I really do not. It was so random. Okay, no, actually, it did have narrative, like, purpose, because it sets up Katniss to kill President Coin and stuff like that. But I was thinking, wouldn't it make more sense story-wise for that person to die to be Katniss's mother instead of her sister? Walk with me here, but Katniss's mother gets this subtle arc throughout the books where she becomes a more present and more active in the lives of others, specifically her daughters, but she starts, helping others and once again finds her true calling in being, a medic. I think that could have been a good closure to her arc, for her to die whilst helping others and sacrificing herself for others. And, her leaving Katniss, but also Katniss realizing how much she actually meant to her. Prim was confusing to me, actually, for similar reasons to Finnick. I just wanted to see her grow up. I wanted to see her as an amazing medic, and instead she just appears out of nowhere and gets killed by the rebellion. I don't know, these might be controversial takes, I guess, but I did not enjoy those deaths whatsoever. There could have been a few, but make it make sense. Specifically with my fantasy. These did not make sense with my fantasy. President Coin is a cunt, obviously, and I hate her. Leading the rebellion, but also then killing the kids, try to become a new dictator, a new authoritarian figure, also setting up new Hunger Games. This whole trying to destroy the dictatorship act, being a way for her to gain control. I was so happy when she died. I cheered. I was like, yep, it's time to hit it to the house, Miss Coin. I was tired of her, and I'm so happy that she died, actually. Yeah, the only good dictator is a dead dictator. Yup. In this book specifically, I was really interested in how they showcase the usage of propaganda and editing clips, taking things out of context, or purposefully playing on emotions of the viewers, sending undercover messages, propaganda language, all of that. I find it so important, especially now with how propaganda is often spread and also hidden. It's so easy to manipulate footage, to edit things, and it can be used to an advantage of, the good side, but also the bad side. And I think this book really shows how easy it is to do that. Yes, they do have some futuristic technology and shit, but the idea still remains the same. And our world, in that sense, isn't that far removed from the world of Panem. We literally see it every day on every social media platform. Overall, out of the three, I would say that this was probably my least favorite, but it also wasn't bad. There are definitely many parts that I did enjoy. And most importantly, it gave us a penis endgame. So that made me happy. Before I even start talking about the film, can someone tell me why Ariana Grande, why that specific song was on the soundtrack? Because it doesn't make sense at all. Were the citizens of Panem just popping pussy during the war or something? What was the vision there? The book is jam-packed with a lot of things to show. So I'm honestly glad that they split the film into two separate parts. Even though the first one is kind of a nothing burger. I do think that it does the book justice. All the scenes are great and some of them really hit me. Peeta. The way he just deteriorates in each broadcast and then tries to help, and him in the end looking like he's about to fucking turn into a werewolf or something. All I'm saying is Gale could never. And speaking of him, God, he's annoying. I don't think I have anything against Liam Hemsworth. I don't really know much about him, except for the fact that he's the brother of Chris Hemsworth, but his portrayal of Gale did not live. I do not support it. One thing this film definitely did better than the books, though, is bringing in Effie Trinket. Effie is the highlight of the film for me. She is such a fun character and such a needed addition to the roster of characters. I'm actually surprised that the book didn't utilize her almost at all. She appears in the end and she's a little shell-shocked, if I remember correctly, but that's kind of it. I love me some Effie Trinket. She is incredible. She is the actual GOAT. She's fierce, she's loyal, she has a pretty solid moral compass, she cares about others and also serves looks whilst doing so. How could you not stand?
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend. And she is the moment. Now, come on now.
I think some of the final scenes of Katniss speaking to Snow and the whole recovery mission, also them finding out about it being a very cruel trick, was just so gaggy. I was sitting there glued to my screen because it didn't look like this in the book. In the book, we don't see the mission whatsoever. We are there with Finnick, listening to his backstory, which, by the way, can we stop here for a second, just like talk about that? Because I was so shocked. We know that being a victor doesn't mean that you're free from the capital. It actually means the opposite. You're just a prisoner. But this was a lot to take in. But it also made me like appreciate Finnick even more because he remains so strong and so loyal despite being so used and abused. He didn't allow it to break him. And like, man, I just love Finnick. If there is ever another prequel book released, I want it to be about Finnick. I think it could be very, very good. Back to the film, I really did enjoy that scene a lot, of like the realization that even though the mission succeeded, they didn't truly win. That slowly materializing was crazy to see. And at least Finnick was happy for like 20 minutes. I think the way they created District 13 was perfect. I kind of had this vision of it being like similar to like the Backrooms or something, but this is perfect. I love the symmetry of it. I love the color choices they make with it. The portrayal of Coin too. That wig is crazy. I love that choice. She looks like a passive-aggressive mathematics teacher, and I couldn't stand her ass, but also she was like kind of perfect. Out of the first 3 films, I would say this is definitely the weakest. All of the biggest events take place in the second one. So this one was a bit meh. It was a bit more boring than the second one, but I think it was still breathtaking in both good and bad ways. I don't think I will ever forget that scene where Katniss lands in District 12 and she's walking through the ashes and seeing all the dead people and what the explosions did to them. The hospital too, man, that scene was just... that hit a bit too much. And that scene specifically, again, made me think a lot about certain countries and how, certain people in those countries would probably not see anything wrong with bombing a hospital or a primary school or anything else, actually. Okay, before I go on a side tangent, let's go to the second film. This film made me appreciate the ending of book 3 more. I did not like some of the character deaths and stuff, but I think seeing them on screen made it partially more understandable to me, specifically in the context of Prim. This film was just gut-wrenching though. The mods in this were horrifying, straight up nightmare fuel. If I saw that in a cinema, I would just straight up shit myself. No, that was horrifying. And also I felt that Finnick's death made slightly more sense here. I don't know, maybe I read that scene wrong, or I don't know, my anger is clouding my judgment, but in the book that death seemed so much more random. Although I maybe would have accepted it if it was like a sacrifice, like if he specifically stayed back in order to like give his crew time to escape or something. I don't know. He shouldn't have died though, and I'm gonna die on that hill. I wanted to see him happy with Annie, raising that kid, just like living in, I don't know. I wanted to see them be happy, and they were happy for like 20 minutes. That scene with the girl in the yellow coat was incredibly tough to watch. I mean, there were a lot of those here, but that one specifically, I had to pause that film for a second to just like collect myself and continue. These films are so heartbreaking and cruel and awful to watch sometimes. That stupid scene with that fucking cat at the end, I was crying. I mean, this entire film was so heartbreaking. I did not have a good time. It presented so much pain and suffering, and I knew what I would be signing up for after reading the book. But like seeing it on a screen, seeing it like acted out, there is just a stark difference in how it hit me. I really did enjoy like the action scenes, the fighting scenes. Snow getting jumped was really fun to watch. Coin getting shot. There were so many cool effects too. But my favorite part was the ending after Coin gets shot and we see Peeta planting the primrose plants. That is husband material if I've ever seen one. That was so beautiful, but also like the grief and also healing from it. That was so beautiful to see. That entire epilogue made me feel a lot of things. And surprisingly, they were positive for once in this franchise. This wasn't my favorite film of the bunch, but it brought closure. It was an epic closure full of scenes that you will not just forget. Also, I think this film and also this book are part of the reason why I actually liked the prequels so much. We know how it ends, mostly good, and there is a happy ending for Panem. So even though both of the prequel books end horribly, I was able to read them and still remember of the ending. And I was treating that ending almost like as like a light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, okay, this is horrible and I hate it, but at least I know that it ends well. The original saga is so good. These books, these films are just so good in quality. A lot of work and care went into them, and they tell a story that is complete, polished, and most importantly, very impactful, especially in our times. But the story doesn't quite end here, since, as I just mentioned, there are 2 different prequel books to The Hunger Games, and I want to discuss them now. You can't catch me now. Firstly, we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This book was kind of perfect, however, the entire time I was reading it, I felt disturbed knowing who the main character and who the main narrator is and who he ends up becoming. And also, listen, I enjoyed... No, that's the wrong word. I didn't enjoy. I was interested to see how things would look like from the perspective of a capital citizen. That interest really quickly faded away after I realized, sorry, I cannot speak for the life of me, that I would be reading a 600-page book where the main character and most of the people in his like closest circles look at people in the districts like they're animals, pets and pests. This book follows Coriolanus Snow as he gets assigned the job of mentoring one of the tributes at the 10th Hunger Games, who is of course Lucy Gray Baird from District 12. He begins developing a relationship with her, and at the same time, his life becomes more and more complicated, partially because of Sejanus and the involvement of Dr. Gall. This was a tough read, but thankfully there were little flickers of basic human decency here and there in the form of Sejanus and Lucy Gray Baird specifically. They are my goats. They are the best. I love them. Sejanus, of course, has problems. He isn't like the purest of characters, but what matters is that he is trying to make things better, and that I love him for. He is full of heart and actually is capable of compassion, which isn't a thing really recognized in the capital at all. When it comes to Lucy Gray, obviously she is a legend. I love her character. She's not just fierce and talented, but also leads with the heart. She's so pure and, most importantly, knows how to recognize evil people. The ending proves it. Lucy Gray would stream Free by Florence and the Machine. Also, can I just say here, I'm one of those people that listens to music when I read books because I like to have like a complete experience. I want to like immerse myself in the world of the book, and I feel like music sometimes helps me because I pick out playlists or albums that kind of fit like, I guess, the aesthetic or like the vibe of the world that the book is presenting. And I was listening to a lot of Florence and the Machine when I was reading these books because I was learning the set list for the Everybody Scream tour, which I got to go to. By the way, one of the best concerts of my life. That was so insane. I lost my fucking shit during Buckle. Like, Buckle is that girl. But specifically, I think the music that Florence and the Machine has created works so well with the Hunger Games. Like, it's actually crazy because I was listening to her entire discography and I was like, man, like it works so well. There are so many songs that just like, it feels like they were made for the Hunger Games. I would say the songs that specifically stood out to me in that regard, I would say are Free, I would say Hunger, Kraken, The Old Religion, and there are so many more that I can name. Like, genuinely listen to her music and like read these books at the same time. I really recommend that. But back to the book, that ending gave me chills in the worst way. Like, that man is a psycho and he needs to be locked up behind bars now. Oh, and also, finally, I now understand the lyrics of Can't Catch Me Now by Olivia Rodrigo in a full way. Banger, by the way. Should have won every single award it was nominated for. Duh. This story was great, but again, I hated all of those people. Like, they were treating these tributes like fucking Tamagotchis. It was like they just installed the Paw game on their phones and needed to keep them alive. The complete lack of any regard for human life was insane to watch, and I honestly hated every second of it. Maybe I'm just too woke because I seriously could not stand that. And the worst part about it is that this kind of outlook on human life isn't even like fictional. They force violence upon these tributes and then act like it's the tributes' fault that they're like killing each other, that they're like this violent and bloodthirsty beasts. It's not. It was, oh my God, I hated I hated that perspective. And also, can I be honest? I am aware that Coriolanus and Lucy Gray are a popular ship, and specifically Coriolanus is a figure that I am aware that many people like first over, because in the film he is portrayed by like a very like conventionally attractive person. But I gotta say, that kind of creeps me out. Like, this is a war criminal, a dictator. He is a horrible person and y'all are thirsting over him? Absolutely not. Just like grow a spine. Even when he's in love with Lucy Gray, he views her as an object, his property. That's not love. And aside from that, he's a criminal. He betrays his own friend, who at one point he calls his like brother, and he still betrays him. And I was so happy when during that ending Lucy Gray flees. Or I guess it's like ambiguous whether she actually dies or not. I don't care. In my headcanon, she flees and lives happily ever after in the woods, far away from that psycho. But still, good on your girl. I guess she listened to The Bolter by Taylor Swift and took notes. And I mean, as she should. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox for a second. From like the lore and world building perspective, actually really enjoyed seeing the infancy of the Hunger Games. It's almost like we're watching something completely different than the games we see in the original trilogy. Same thing later also with Sunrise on the Reaping. From the perspective of lore, it is very interesting to see, and also getting a villain's backstory is also something that I typically very much enjoy. My problem is that the entire story is from his perspective, and it's exhausting sometimes seeing the world through the eyes of this very clearly evil person, even though his real evil side really just like develops during the plot of this book. Like, he doesn't really start out being like cruel, but, you know, the seeds are planted already. It wasn't easy to get through this book, but the story was insane. And I was left speechless at many points, whether it was because I was shocked by just like how cruel and inhumane it was, or because I was like moved by it. It was both of these things, sometimes even at the same time. Now, this film, I have conflicting emotions about this film, because on one hand I actually enjoyed it more than the book, but at the same time I think there were a few things that were cut for timing from the book that, yeah, they made it flow so much better, but I think what was removed was part of the reason why it's so easy for certain people to romanticize the relationship of Coriolanus Snow and Lucy Gray. We don't see, for example, the funeral of one of Snow's classmates. I forgot her name, but during that funeral, there is a scene where the tributes get paraded around, and the dead bodies of certain of the tributes are like dragged to send a clear message. We also don't see any of the conversations between Clementia and Snow after she gets bitten. It felt like at certain points, this film was almost playing everything up to fit a certain aesthetic. It was meant to be aesthetically pleasing, which is something that kind of all the films do, but here it was the most apparent. I did, however, enjoy it a lot. It was a pretty good watch, I would say. The acting in it too, it just really, really brought the story to life. I think the casting in this film was actually perfect. Hunter Schafer as Tigris was incredible. And I mean, of course, Rachel Ziegler, man.
Oh, mother. My mother.
Mama put that BFA to work, bitch. Hate towards her will not be tolerated on my channel. That voice alone is one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. This woman has talent in spades, and it's incredible to watch her do her thing. I think Viola Davis as Dr. Gall was insane. She gave her so much like menacing energy. She was terrifying just like in the books. She is a psycho, and Viola Davis plays a perfect villain. I really enjoyed the portrayals of Sejanus and Coriolanus as well. I don't think there was a single bad performance in this film. Actually, it was just peak. I think I enjoyed the film more than the book too, because I wasn't constantly seeing Coriolanus's inner dialogue, because I was getting tired of that man in the book. And this film obviously didn't have that element, which I was partially glad, because it was exhausting. Like, it allowed me to enjoy the story more, but at the same time, that could have been a problem. I mentioned the ship being weird, but in this film, you don't really notice the power dynamic between Coriolanus and Lucy Gray and how it's very clearly fucked up. You have to really read into it in order to notice that. And that might be one of the reasons why so many people still ship them together and are like, oh my God, perfect couple. Like, no, I think this film kind of fails in showing how transactional and how objectifying this relationship was. That scenery of the film, though, was beautiful, especially the forest of District 12, like the color of it, the sets, everything was perfect. The soundtrack was the best, just in general. It was the best out of all of the films. Period. It was insane. Stacked, actually. This, I think, was my second favorite film of the franchise, just after Catching Fire. It was so good. And now we move on to the last book in the Hunger Games series, which is, of course, Sunrise on the Reaping. I hate this book. I have not felt the things I felt whilst reading this book in a while, and it was not fun. This broke me. This book follows Hamish Abernathy after he gets unfairly reaped for the second Quarter Quell, in which double the amount of tributes are set to participate. I didn't really enjoy Hamish that much in the original trilogy, but this made me reflect more on his character and what I thought about him, because suddenly so much of like who he is makes sense. Like after that ending, I'd be surprised if he didn't end up like falling into the hands of alcoholism. Like, girl, I get it. That ending, it was like I was being repeatedly punched into the stomach. It was so painful. And that epilogue actually made me feel unwell. The sentiment he shares of, now I don't drink to hurt myself just out of habit because I found a family again. Like, kill me now, actually.
Yeah.
This story actually made me feel unwell, and I think part of why it was seeing the community aspect in the tributes and them socializing with one another. We see that earlier specifically in Catching Fire, but that's different. There, these are mostly adults, you know, they are previous victors, they're political figures, and you can tell that it's mostly just like politics at play here. And here, it's children. Seeing them bond together and form alliances, help each other before the games, and then seeing how these relationships end, it was heartbreaking at every single point. Specifically the way BT gets punished, how Snow plays with Hamish, everything with Luella. I was just not okay. This book was cruel, tear-jerking, did not enjoy, would not recommend. This book shows firsthand how the capital treats other citizens of Panem. It's like an example of how horrible it is, but it also shows how the actions of the capital also provoke people. We see more people being impertinent, being a problem for the capital, for President Snow. We see that in the form of Hamish. We see that with Maisily, Ampert, BT, Plutarch, Lenora, and so forth. We see how people turn towards the rebellion. More people want to be a problem for the capital, even though they pay insane prices for it. Just like knowing the way that the story ends and that epilogue, of course, it makes it all seem worth it. These are acts of bravery, of standing up to an oppressive system in different ways, and I find that so inspiring. All the stuff in the arena was incredible, but also absolutely gut-wrenching. So many of these deaths were just too much to deal with, and that's because we had previously established a relationship with these kids, and this book really puts an emphasis on how innocent they are. So many of them are just like actually little kids, barely teenagers, that are being put in this situation, and they are unable to deal with it. They feel sad, they miss their loved ones, they don't want to be left alone, but ultimately they die. These characters were so good though. I loved seeing Max and Wyrus as well as young Effie. Maisily really won me over in the end, and this also made me, of course, really appreciate Hamish. I find it almost difficult to voice my opinion about this book. Like, I finished it yesterday, and at the time of me recording this, of course, and I just closed it and I just sat there for 30 minutes crying because I was like, what the fuck? I'm gonna be honest, I think aside from Catching Fire, this was probably my favorite book, even though it was a very painful read. The film for Sunrise on the Reaping comes out this year, and I'm very excited to see it in cinemas, but also now knowing what this book is, I don't know if I'm gonna survive it, actually. We've seen the first trailer, which I liked. I think it looks very, very promising. But what also made me very, very excited about it is the cast. McKenna Grace as Maisily, like, yes, that's perfect casting. I think she can do so much with that character. And I just think McKenna is a very talented actress, but I think Maisily is like the perfect character for her. Maya Hawke as Wyrus, gagged. And also there are other castings that just really surprised me. Like Glenn Close is Drusilla, which is perfect. Billy Porter as Magno, tense across the board. Exactly. You have Edwin Riding as Vitus, which I was kind of surprised to see, but I think he's going to be great in it. I don't think we've ever really seen him in a role like Vitus, so I'm really excited to see the range of his acting, because I know him mostly from Young Royals, obviously, which I love that show, but he's very impulsive and very angry in that show. And Vitus is not that whatsoever. So I'm very excited to see like levels to his acting. Whitney Peak as Lenora, I mean, exactly. Then also you have Kieran Culkin as Caesar, which is such an interesting casting, but I do love it. Elle Fanning is young Effie Trinket. Perfect casting. I believe that's actually a very popular fan cast for Effie. And the fact that it actually like happened is crazy. There are so many names attached to this film that make me very excited because, man, this is a star-studded cast, but it still manages to be surprising. There are plenty of names that I do not recognize, and I'm so excited to see them for the first time. I think this cast is gonna cook and deliver us some extremely heartbreaking scenes. Actually, now that I come to think of it, I don't want this film. I don't want to see it. Don't show it to me. Don't show it to me, Rachel. Another part about it that I was like wondering was the soundtrack. Who is gonna make the song for this film? And I would like to present you my several candidates for that title. I would say there are 3 that I'm really, really hoping are going to happen. And then there's one that I just like, because of my Delulu, I'm gonna put here. First, I'm gonna say Noah Khan. I think this is gonna be a big year for Noah Khan. Obviously, his album comes out next month, and I'm gonna be reacting to it on YouTube. So, you know, watch out for that. I think Noah could make an incredible song. If you listen to his music, I already feel like it partially would work with the vibe that we've been presented before by the different Hunger Games soundtracks. So I think he could really make something incredible, and his vocal range too would work so well. I think it'd be amazing to hear someone like Florence Welch, you know, Florence and the Machine. I think that would be amazing. And the fact that she has not made a song for the Hunger Games yet is kind of crazy. Like, hello, that just makes so much sense. Why hasn't that happened yet? I would love to also hear Chapel as well. I think she proved that she can do it when she did the backing vocals for Olivia's song for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I think she would be incredible in that role. She could bring the drama. And my little Delulu pick is of course going to be Conan Gray. I am the leader of the Conan Gray propaganda, so hello. He is putting out the Wishbone Deluxe in April, which I'm also going to be reacting to on YouTube. He just put out The Best, which is incredible. I think he could really make a gut-wrenching song for this film. And also, he's already besties with McKenna Grace, so like, just let him into the recording booth. This film is actually gonna kill me, and I cannot wait to see it. But for now, I want to leave you guys with a few closing words and a few things that I took away from the Hunger Games. Recently, I watched a video from the Queer Kiwi, who, by the way, I'm a big fan of, where she talked about the problematic way in which we consume the Hunger Games series, and it really made me think a lot. I really recommend that video. It was definitely something that I had in the back of my mind when I was watching these films and reading these books. We see the edits, the ships, the fanfics, the promotional deals, and even the way that these movies look. It romanticizes the source material that isn't technically aesthetically appealing. The books are full of death. Yes, of course, but they're also full of injuries and things we could consider gross, and that is not seen in the films. It's become something that we watch for entertainment rather than something to reflect over. I'm not gonna repeat all her talking points, just like go and watch that video if you haven't already, but that is something that I want to mention as an outsider observing this fandom. A lot of the times it feels like we're becoming the capital and we're watching this for entertainment when these stories are not meant to be seen as entertaining. They're meant to be seen as lessons, in my opinion. But aside from that, I do have other closing words about what I took away from the Hunger Games. I think this is a very important book series. I think they teach us to openly question authority, especially that is forced. They teach us to value human life. They show us how propaganda works. It's a caricature, a dystopian reflection of the things we see every day in the real world. I've previously alluded to it. Everything in these books reminds me of things we've all witnessed take place, even just last year. The power of propaganda and how easy it is to take things out of context, how people still don't understand what a dictatorship is and how easy it is to lose your rights regardless of your political beliefs, how the regard for human life ends when the human life doesn't belong to someone who is a white cisgender man, and hell, even how the people we could see as beacons of hope, figures that could change the world for the better, can still end up being total assholes and screwing us all over. And most importantly, how all of that equates to the suffering of innocent people. Politics are a difficult topic, but I think it's important to have books like these that can send these types of messages. Obviously, I'm not going to be sitting here and saying that the Hunger Games are like the greatest commentary on oppressive systems and dictatorship ever made, even though I think it's incredibly well done. I've seen in a lot of online forums people saying that that title belongs to 1984 by George Orwell, which I would be willing to agree with. But either way, that doesn't matter. What matters is that an entire generation of people got to grow up with these books, and most of these folks learned a thing or two from them. Although not all of them, because I have seen posts in the past of people being like, oh my God, it's so difficult to be a conservative in the Hunger Games fandom. I'm like, well, I just wanna congratulate you on missing the point so badly. Like, how is that even possible? How can you read the Hunger Games and be like, oh my God, yay, I'm gonna vote for Trump? Like, it's the same thing when people watch films like Star Wars and openly, obviously root for the rebellion, but then turn around and are unable to apply that same logic in the real life. Some people are just never gonna learn. You could sit them down and explain things to them like they're 5 years old and they're still not gonna get it. But the rest of us should take notes and try our best to apply them. The world is going to shit currently. We have another war being started by the US. We have trans people being stripped of their rights, immigrants getting villainized everywhere. The killing of innocent people in Gaza continues. Ukraine continues to suffer. And the world is run by white billionaires, many of which also like children a bit too much. But I think books like these are kind of a promise that all of that isn't forever. The world might look bleak now, but it doesn't have to look that way in the future if we take it into our own hands. And that, I think, is beautiful. But it starts with recognizing the systems at work around us and learning to deconstruct them. And I think that ultimately is the takeaway that I have from the Hunger Games. I want to thank you so much for watching, for sitting through me yapping about partially very depressing stuff. I really appreciate you if you made it till the end. I want to thank you so much for watching. The next video is going to be slightly more lighthearted because I'm going to be back doing a reaction next week to an album that just came out today, which is of course called This Music May Contain Hope by Ray. I'm so excited I'm so excited for the album. I think it's going to be incredible. And yeah, so that's going to be the next video and I hope to see you there. In the next month, there are also going to be more commentary videos about pop culture and also some shows. I'm very excited for the videos that I have lined up for April. And I hope that you are going to be excited for them too. But for now, thank you so much for watching. And I will see you next week for an album reaction. Take care.